broadcasting a new paradigm on the One Network.
I'm Lisa Harrison. Today is Monday, what day is it? The 24th of November already. And today I'm speaking with Alfred Webre, futurist, founder of Exopolitics, and author, whose latest book, let me see here, it's got a great title, The Dimensional Ecology of the Omniverse.
Mm-hmm.
You don't muck around with titles, I'll give you that. Welcome, Alfred. I mean, I've had the pleasure of talking to you several times publicly, quite a few times privately, and it's always fun to talk to you because we hold a similar worldview in terms of positive future, positive timeline, and that's really what I wanted to get into today because it's chaos out there. As we were just saying prior to recording, that there are so many players on the field right now, so many conflicting stories. I do think in part that is a concerted, deliberate effort in order to confuse people. But at the same time, underneath that, I think a lot of the positive information, people who are genuine in their background, their intent, what they're bringing to the table, it's just time. It's time for that to come out now. And for probably 10 years now, thanks to an experience that I had, you would call it a nighttime vision experience. I woke up one morning with the words, "The light will be shone in all the dark places." And from that point on, I just felt that it's not that things are getting worse. It's just that we are being made aware of what's been going on for a very long time. It's not like the Catholic Church or the Vatican have only just started to play up. That's been going on forever, but more and more of it is coming out now. So it looks, from one perspective, it looks like, things could be getting worse, but I don't think that's the case. So I really wanted to get into positive timelines because you've been putting a lot of information about that lately. 2017 and how that plays a role, and what you call breakaway. Breakaway. What did you call them? Breakaway.
The breakaway civilization.
Civilization.
Yeah.
And there's sort of like a plan A, B, C, and D there, isn't there?
Yeah. There's alternative 3, and actually. In 2009, together with my colleagues, Andrew Bashago and Laura Eisenhower, we declared alternative 4,
nice.
which is just about to kick in now, I think.
Well, before we get onto that, because I want to go into what they're alternatives to, for people who may not be aware of that information.
Sure.
Your equation for positive timeline, what makes up that equation, and why are you so convinced we're there?
Yeah. Well, this is something that grew out of actual research that I've been doing for the past 40 years, actually more than 40 years. My first book, which I wrote in 1973, and it was published in 1974, had to do. It was the first book that integrated earth sciences, geology, seismology, with parapsychology and the psychic predictions of remote viewers such as Edgar Cayce. But if you got more deeply into it, it took a particular remote viewing that he had of what I would call a global coastal event that was supposed to happen in the early 21st century. By global coastal event, I mean that's where there's a large outside shock, say a meteor or something that hits the Earth, or large tsunamis, and the coasts of all continents and large islands are affected.
Mm-hmm.
And he put out a vision that such an event would occur in the early 20th century, involving a shift in the axis of the Earth. And so I wrote a book about that in 1973, and analyzed it because he had a number of other associated remote visions where he goes to a non-local place and purportedly sees something that is going to occur along some timeline and brings it back. And he was fairly accurate about some aspects. For example, seeing portions of Atlantis that surfaced in Bimini in the Bahamas. And there were artifacts that came up there, and it happened in exactly the years that he foresaw and in the sequence that he foresaw. And I spoke to the people who have found the artifacts then, just a few years earlier. And I spoke to all of the research labs in seismology and at geology at the time. I went down to Virginia Beach and spoke to Edgar Casey's grandson, and spoke to a professor of experimental psychology at Rutgers University, who was also an expert in parapsychology, who was actually my co-author on the book.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was perhaps the first effort into trying to understand what timelines are and what catastrophic timelines are. And that was the first of many books that followed from it. We Are the Earthquake Generation, all of these popular books at the time. It was in all of the airport bookstores, and I was on national television in the U.S. and in Canada, and it was kind of, oh, what's going to happen? Is the world come to an end?
It was a big deal.
Yeah, it was a big deal. So then, in what occurred is that in the early 2000s, right after 2000, I as an exopolitical journalist, two things happened. One is I wrote the book Exopolitics, which itself has a time travel component to it. And also I met a whistleblower from the CIA time travel project, Andrew Bishago. And what he told me was that in 1971, they had a one-time chronovisor probe. A chronovisor is not a time travel machine in which you get and you actually travel to a location on a particular timeline. Rather, it's of two varieties. You can either have a two-dimensional chronovisor, like a TV set, or like we're doing on this TV now, where you travel to the future, a location in time, space in the future and the past that you've dialed up, so you can see the dinosaurs, you can see events in the future at a particular location in time space. A location in time space would not be XYZ, but it would be A XYZ, A being the time coordinate. In other words, we live inside a time-space hologram. and it's an intelligently designed hologram composed of multiple timelines. So it's like, to put it in very simple terms, which some people get queasy about, we live inside a virtual reality. Mm-hmm. Now, people get queasy about that because it means that it's like we live like inside a pair of Google glasses, fancy ones. And that's true. We live inside avatars that are called Lisa the avatar, Alfred the avatar, and we have these other entities called souls that are non-locally based in another dimension that we'll call the interlife. And they incarnate into these avatars. And people can read my book, The Dimensional Ecology of the Omniverse, and they can show from, what we did in that book is that we took all of the, according to the scientific evidence, all of the replicable scientific information, that shows how all of that occurs, and showing that, yes, we do live inside of a virtual reality. And that's essentially it. And time travel, it turns out that time travel, teleportation, and telepathy are the technologies that are essential to the reality that we live in anywhere in our universe, in the multiverse, which is the collection of universes, or in the omniverse, which is all the universes in the multiverse plus the interlife, the spiritual dimensions. Because what happens when you decide to leave your body is that the soul teleports from your body to the interdimensional portal between our time-space reality and the interlife, and exits. That's why they say, go for the light, go for the light. You're actually going for that interdimensional portal. So, once you get into time travel and timelines and you begin to understand time science, that reduces what formerly was called religion back to science. And this is the era of the integration of religion and science. So that's essentially what I've been doing for the last 5 years, as I wrote the book called The Dimensional Ecology of the Omniverse, which now a major publisher has taken up and will be bringing out in the fall in the winter of 2015 under the title The Omniverse. It's too, I'm kind of complex, and they said, look, simplify it. Just call it The Omniverse. And I agree with them. People will get it better that way. So back to the positive future. So what I did, and your viewers...
Back to Andrew Basiago and the coronavirus.
Oh, Andy. Yeah. So Andy said, look, in 1971, at DARPA, what we did is we got into a 3D chronovisor, which was, instead of being like a flat screen, it's like a hologram. So we go there virtually. It's like the movie Avatar. You're actually taken there in your virtual thing. And you kind of go around. And what they saw there was that in 1971, they went to 2013 to the U.S. Supreme Court building in Washington, D.C. And the U.S. Supreme Court, and they found it under 100 feet of brackish water. And that's just across the street from the U.S. Capitol, which is just down the mall from the White House. And that whole quadrant is the most protected airspace in North America. That's really protected. That's why the UFOs like to zoom in all the time, because it's so protected, right? I just had to get that in. Right. Since there's so many players, people should know that this is a multidimensional game.
Yeah.
So, and he said that at the time, the lieutenant commander from Naval Intelligence, who was overseeing the experiment became so nervous that he tipped over the glass of water as he was debriefing them, because they saw that the U.S. Supreme Court building was under 100 feet of brackish water. And then in 2010, a few years later, my colleague, Dr. Courtney Brown at the Farsight Institute, assembled the largest number of military-trained remote viewers in history. And they were just going to do a study of what the effect of global warming was going to be. And so they ventured out to 2013 thinking that they were just going to say, oh, we're going to get a few more inches on the beach, you know. And instead, they found a global coastal event where the Sydney Opera House is underwater. There's stragglers coming out of Sydney up what's left of the coast of Australia. You know, Washington, D.C. is underground. The U.S. Capitol, that in 1971, in DARPA's chronovisor thing, you know, the Capitol was totally destroyed and underwater. Every major city, every coast around the planet is underwater, is destroyed. And Courtney pointed out that at that time, what other social indicators were happening? Well, you had what occurred starting in 1971, which was the Nixon administration under Donald Rumsfeld, who was in charge of this program, right? Of the teleportation and time travel program, is that they invested $3 trillion in building deep underground military bases. For who? For the financial elite, the political elite, for the royalty over in Norway. All the kings and queens would go in there, all the elite bankers. All the military would go in there, all the essential scientists and, you know, all the other guys would go in there. And the hoi polloi, which means the many people like you and me, we're known as the surface dwellers. We would be left to fend for ourselves. And they're going, yippee, we can get rid of them this way. Because they want kind of an elite theme park. That's kind of their view. So, and they had dated it for June of 2013. Well, lo and behold, June of 2013 comes along and nothing happens, right? Okay, and those of us who had been following this, I mean, I had an article published in one of your Australian magazines called Veritas magazine, in which I show, look what's happening here. There's about a collision about to take place. However, I think it's a positive timeline, okay? But of course, people are out there, they're in the sun, and they don't even know that there's all this, you know, thing, and trillions of dollars have gone into the underground, and you know, the wealthiest people in the world, Bill Gates and everybody, had built seed banks with GMO seeds in Norway, and they're all like packing it under. And so nothing happens in June of 2013, and everybody goes, boom. But then all of a sudden, there's this enormous meteor in Russia, right? So Courtney Brown comes out and says, that was a global coastal event, but it happened in another dimension, in another timeline.
When it comes to remote viewing and the way Courtney did that particular experiment, the questions that you set up initially to do an experiment like that does limit, in my mind, where you go. And
it does.
By stipulating the effects of global warming, and there were other stipulations, there were other guidelines within that experiment that I felt limited it too much.
Yeah, and that's why the real data came from the 1971 DARPA chronovisor probe, because they physically went there to that timeline and so we had three data points. We had the Edgar Cayce remote viewing, which is documented in my book, The Age of Cataclysm, which if people want to read that, it's a classic. I put it online for free at exopolitics.com. You can read it there. And then we have the DARPA visit. You can go to, again, exopolitics.com. On the right-hand menu, there's a link that's time travel and teleportation. And then you have the Farsight Institute. So all of this is leading up. And so then I say, from a time science point of view, all of these things did not happen, and all of these predictions did not happen. Why? Because there was a prediction that as of December 21st, 2012, some people say other dates like October 28th, 2011, the very portal of our universe began broadcasting permanently waves of unity consciousness, which is we are one, as opposed to duality consciousness, which is I win, you lose, which is the consciousness of kind of the controlling matrix, or you could say a prior cycle of our planet around our particular black hole. And so I began to realize that the shift that took place as of December 21st, 2012, which we'll just take it as a working date, I mean, could be described as a positive future, which is a function of two things. One, the positive timeline that we're on. We actually shifted timelines. We shifted holographic timelines. So it's as though we are figures inside a Game Boy, a game machine, a game, a virtual game. And somebody changed the game. They changed from catastrophe land to in-between land. Okay? And that's what we're on now.
In between land?
Yeah.
That implies that we could still shift lanes again.
No, because I'm about to define what in between land is.
Great.
In between land, I mean, put it this way, they've shifted from catastrophe land to positive land, with some people who are still hung up on in between, think they're still in catastrophe land, think we're in between land, or people who have become so accustomed to catastrophe land think we're in between land, or the Homo sapiens, who has so many millennia of conditioning of being in the jungle where a tiger's going to jump out and eat you, that they're more attentive to the negative than the positive. And this is shown by psychological tests, that humans scan the environment, and if you see something negative, you remember that and you hold on to it, and positive news is you just forget about it.
So you're saying in between because not everybody has consciously made the shift. So even though we're all in
we're in the process of awakening, and there's a power matrix that has made plans based on the old timeline, and that are still trying to hold power as though they are on the old timeline.
Gotcha.
And that's why their false flags haven't happened. That's why World War III they haven't been able to get World War III off the ground. They haven't been able to get Ebola Gate off the ground. They haven't been able to get any of their false flags off the ground. And none of the monstrosities that they've been planning have eventuated, because they were planned on another timeline in duality consciousness under another formula, which was problem, reaction, solution. Create a problem, create a reaction, that's a solution, okay?
Manipulate the reaction.
Yeah, exactly. And now we're in a different holographic timeline, a different holographic reality in which each individual soul is sovereign, and in which each individual soul as awakening is awakening to unity consciousness, which is we are one, and in which the structural conditions of the hologram are positive. So any enterprise, thought, plan, or individual that is based on or coming out of duality consciousness, I win, you lose, is not going to thrive. And it's just taking, and the way I say in between is because we're in this transitional time where humans are just waking up to the fact that they're living in paradise. And it might take, my feeling is that by 2025, we'll have the landing of paradise on Earth. What a number of reports back from extraterrestrial entities, these are from different entities, are saying, this being 2014, and again, taking specific times, as you know, is very challenging because time is a 3D is a 3D dimension and measurer, and once you go up to the dimensions where those who are saying this, there's a translation factor, and things don't always happen that way. But supposedly, the next 14, 15, and 16 are the process of, all of this, the old deconstructing, the new emerging, and in 2017, there's a sufficient quantum of awakening that everyone goes, aha, everything is good. We're in paradise. Everything's okay, which is the case now, but there's not a sufficient quantum of people to go, oh, everything's good. We're in paradise.
Well, what do you say to those people who are still slugging away in their day-to-day lives? They don't feel like anything changed, even if they weren't aware of 2012. They're still perhaps struggling with a lot of the old paradigm limitations, restrictions on their own sovereignty, as you say, and their freedoms. People who are seeing all the negativity in the world and still think we're going to hell in a handbasket. How do we support them in having that aha moment? Or is it going to happen regardless? These are the things, like, do you see what we've been calling the event? Some kind of global mass awakening, whether it takes a moment or several moments, or are we in the event now and it's just going to take 3 or 4 years? Is this the event? It's just not a momentary one.
Well, what I wrote in this paper, it's a 27-page paper, and it's actually the first chapter of my next book. And just go to positivefuture.info, and it lays out how this is happening. Just think of the self-organizing universe, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Think of a video game where, okay, you're in a video arcade and you've been playing this video game called War, Disease, Crime, and Poverty, right? It's called War, Disease, Crime, and Poverty, okay? And you put in your quarter or your dollar or whatever. So that's all you've been getting, right? And then it says, time it up, okay? Planet Earth, changeover.
Rainbows and fluffy bunnies.
The Road to Paradise. Oh, let's play that. Ching. Oh shit! Wait a minute. What is this? Okay, no, it's that, and the game is now that suddenly Earth has shifted timelines. Earth has shifted its morphic field, and the game is how are the 7 billion going to catch up to that? See, that's the game. It's not. It's backwards of what people say. It's backwards of what people say. People say, "Oh, we're all going to have to work to change this." No, we're all going to have to wake up and realize that it's changed.
Yes,
It's really now. That's not it because it all works together. You know, yes, there is a component where collectively our co-creation does change and make it into a paradise on Earth, and the structural component, the actual timeline, and the unity consciousness is coming in there through the interdimensional portal at the core of our universe. This is humongous. And if people see, one of the reasons why I wrote the book, The Omniverse, was just because we have been so isolated. Our planet has been under quarantine, under universe quarantine, for at least the last 500,000 to 1 million. Oh my gosh, did you see that white dove coming? On cue. Okay, I've got to get this out. I've got to get this out. She's saying I've got to get it out. Okay. Our planet has been under quarantine for at least, spiritual quarantine for at least the last 1 million to 500,000 years. And that's because of the Lucifer rebellion, the rebellion of the upper angels that were in charge of this sector of the galaxy, of inhabited planets, against sort of the universal governance. And this is in the spiritual dimensions. It's not like the Galactic Federation, which is more the administration of planets. And so we have been cut off for 1 million years. So the level of out of touchness and isolation of this planet is cosmic. So part of the reason why I wrote this book was just to bring an entry level of information just to the common parlance as to the nature of the multiverse and the omniverse. Let's take, for example, just the number of universes in the multiverse, like our universe. The most recent information through a paper of 2 scientists at Princeton is that if we were just to write out the number of universes that are in the multiverse, that number alone would be 260 million miles long. Just writing it out in 12-point type. Just writing out that number. The human mind can't comprehend it. And we're one small planet in one small galaxy in one universe. The number of intelligent civilizations is beyond our comprehension.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're living in an exactly backwards reality here. So what's happening now is we're turning reality inside out, inside of a generation, which is a miracle. And that's what's occurring in our shifting timelines in this virtual reality game. Someone put a quarter in, and we're shifting the game inside of a generation without destroying the natives. You know, they say, oh, we go to an isolated island like the Galapagos like the Galapagos Islands, you meet a Stone Age tribe, you bring in transit radius, and you ruin the culture, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how can they do it without destroying the natives? And the way that you do it is through an inner invasion, because what we are, the starseeds, is that first, say, from a kind of a Star Wars point of view, say about 2,000 years ago, we had the first kind of level of paratroopers of heavy souls coming in through Joshua ben Joseph, Jesus of Nazareth, when they sent in a paradise son of God to reclaim the territory from Lucifer and Satan, right? Boom. Is this in your column or is it my column, right? Boom. And now we're sort of the follow-up troops who incarnate, right? We incarnate from a whole wide variety of places. And we're coming in and we're exposing all the matrix of Earth who have been, carrying out all of these satanic and Luciferic rituals to keep all of the things in power. The irony being that Lucifer and Satan have already been executed according to the million years of the trials that have occurred post the Lucifer rebellion over the last million years. This is deep exopolitics. So that what's occurring now is the liberation of planet Earth after Lucifer and Satan have been knocked off, and the so-called matrix governments here that are Luciferian and satanic don't have a clue that Lucifer and Satan don't even exist anymore.
You're going to have to elaborate. You're going to have to elaborate on Lucifer and Satan don't exist anymore, because there's a lot of people who are going to have a problem with that. Just that very idea. Because to what they see in the world, what they experience, that's what they see everywhere.
Yeah.
And there are those who are still experiencing and still bringing information on the sacrificial side of it.
No, right. This does not mean that negativity does not exist in our universe. We have many flaws in the universe. Some people believe that there were flaws in the very creation of this universe, which manifest as the archons, which are sort of inorganic mind viruses that create negativity and separation. And so one diagnosis for what the Earth has is an archonic infestation. And it's really confronting that archonic infestation more than any spiritual hierarchies of Luciferians or satanics that is now the Earth's problem, that is creating all of this chaos. It's more at that level that is getting each individual human to go back inside to reclaim and heal their soul, because each human is being attacked from an archonic level, but that the historic entities that first led to the derailment of this planet historically and exopolitically a million years ago through the Lucifer rebellion, which led to many Star Wars in this solar system, and which are codified in the Old and the New Testament. That's a separate kind of incursion of predatory interdimensional beings from the archons. There's even a third channel of predatory interdimensional beings that Earth has been subject to. We're a very targeted planet. We're kind of a hyper-targeted planet. And that is over the last 100 to 100 years, we have been targeted by a hostile race of Draco reptilians in alliance with Orion Greys for takeover of Earth and Mars and its moons.
You know what?
And
You've
that's
already said so much. You've already
what.
you've,
No, but this
you've
is
said
just
so much, and just in that one little.
this is like kindergarten. This is kindergarten in exopolitics.
I realize that. Now, let me explain how I've visualized all of this for myself.
Okay.
Just what you've recently said is that when I look at nature, when I look at the planet,
Yeah.
it thrives quite naturally, 85 to 90% of it, through a symbiotic relationship. There's a mutual support structure that goes on, and when it's left alone, when we stay out of the picture, in particular, it thrives quite naturally. It finds its own balance, and it does it through a beautiful symbiotic supportive method. Then there is a minority of life on this planet, you can call it archontic, that to me is parasitic. And it's almost as if now there's a number of ways you could look at this too, two operating systems, two support frequencies got mixed up where they shouldn't have been and are playing themselves out on this planet. But the symbiotic supportive frequency or system, operating system, is the most powerful. It is the one that's naturally, to me, to my thinking, the natural one for this planet. And going back to what you were talking about in terms of this new frequency that's been put out, it's the frequency that this planet is naturally in harmony with. It's the frequency that this planet, the unity consciousness, that we are all one, hence the name of this network now, the One Network, is the one that this planet always should have been operating on. So anything that is parasitic in nature, or archontic, if that's the word you choose, is not of unity consciousness, is of not for the greater good of all. These are all these words and sayings that we use, that is service to self rather than service to others. As you said, they just can't take hold. They can't get off the ground. They are exposed often within minutes, thanks to all of those who are staying very vigilant online and spreading that information and looking for all of the telltale signs. So for me, the positive timeline, absolutely, I agree with you. We're on it. Do I think it's it could still go either way? No, I actually think it's a done deal. But then the danger of that is, do we just sit back and wait for it to happen and wait to wake up one day and feel fabulous? You've pointed out, no, there's an element of, there is still work that we need to do. We still need to come together. But the biggest work, in my mind, is the internal work. It is the becoming heart-centered, getting out of your head, embracing the concept of unity consciousness, of we are one, of being of service to others. And what I'm noticing is more and more people are noticing their ability to manifest these days when they're coming from that place. It's like people are freaking out, going, it's instant.
Yeah.
You know, I'm asking for what I want, and within half an hour, someone turns up with it. It's just, but only when they're coming from that place, when they're coming from a place of fear or stress or concern or selfishness, it's not happening. And that's how we can each, as individuals, do something for and within ourselves and in our day-to-day in order to speed up, perhaps, this shift from one lane to another.
Yes, and it's not shift from one lane to the other. The other lane isn't there anymore.
Yeah, right.
We're here. What it does is that it brings reality more, and it brings this reality more into its potential. And because the ultimate, it's as though they say, when are we going to get into 4 or 5D? It says, you're here. When are you going to accept it?
Yeah, exactly.
It's, and because this planet wants more and more awaken, then there is more and more self-actualizing, and it becomes a self-actualizing, self-organizing reality. There was a model that was derived, was published in an issue of the American Society for Psychical Research journal in the early 70s, called PMIR, Psi-Mediated Instrumental Response. And what that model showed is that all conscious human activity is derived by, actually occurs and is planned and moved by subconsciously derived psychic information. And what this means is that we're all in touch with each other by this elaborate unconscious and subconscious telepathic network, which is non-local. It means that the accidental meeting that you have with a stranger or a friend on a street corner in which you exchange valuable information is elaborately pre-planned. And that's how human society works. Right now, because of the shift, we're now under less oppression than we were before. As more and more of us awaken more and allow unity consciousness to come into our reality and allow this new holographic positive timeline to allow ourselves to be inside of the virtual hologram that we're in, that, it's that our senses just can't take all of that input now, because we're actually part of this. We're in hyper-organized reality, and we've always been. It's just always been like much slower because I've got to take my time to get across town and accidentally run into my friend who'll say, there's a meeting next week over at the store where I'll find out about something else. And now it takes place, oh yeah, that's it. And pretty soon it'll be telepathically. And that's what's occurring now. And so, and the whole unity consciousness, the old duality consciousness, which is, it was I win, you lose. So everybody had to figure out, well, what am I going to get out of it? And so people spent all their time trying to figure out, what am I going to get out of it? And what's they going to get out of it? And why is she doing that she's going to get out of it? We don't have to spend any more energy on that, right?
Right.
Because it's all win-win. The game has changed. Somebody put a new quarter. The old game of war, crime, disease, and poverty is over. It's a new game. It's called paradise.
So what does this paradise look like, do you think, based on the research that you've done and all the people that you've spoken to? Come 2017, how do you think this is going to start to roll out? Sense of how
right.
it affects our daily lives.
It did. I went to, I actually have written that out. And if you go to positivefuture.info, I list at least 10 areas where it'll start. Now, those areas, it's hard to. Will people continue to eat animals?
Mm-hmm.
That's a good question, right? Is that part of the consciousness change shift? I mean, certainly, they start granting animals personhood, right? I mean,
yes.
Right now, right now, except in Buckingham Palace, they don't eat other people. Right?
Well, I can tell you, after spending some time in Morocco, where you go to buy some chicken. It's not you're not buying fillets that are nicely wrapped in plastic. You're going to the market and you're picking live Fred over there and saying, "I'll have Fred," and he is killed and plucked right there and handed to you in a bag,
right,
warm and juicy. And there's a lot of people that chose not to eat chicken anymore. So when the reality of the situation is presented to you, that changes things. I don't know how familiar you are with the practice of Ramadan or the recent goat sacrifice ritual. But when there's blood running down the streets, literally, and people are hacking off limbs of goats and sucking them directly, it does change your viewpoint on eating meat. And I think that we've become so sanitized and so removed from the process. Everything's tucked away in barns, cages. We don't see any of that. We get it all nicely wrapped in plastic, and it's all dealt with. And so you can completely disassociate yourself from the process and from what you're actually eating. It's just an ingredient.
Right. Well, how does this sound? The recognition of animals as sentient beings with rights. A worldwide grant of personhood rights to animals with concomitant rights against murder, slaughter, torture, and cruel and inhumane treatment. Special intelligent civilization status for cetaceans, including whales and dolphins. Development of safe, healthy, tasty protein meat substitutes for humanity's consumption and nutrition. I mean, there are plenty of people, journalists who go up on spaceships and they say they have the most delicious meals there that are made out of stuff that's not animals, and they, oh, you want a steak dinner? Here's a steak dinner. Because all this is interference patterns. We're just interference patterns. And once you understand that, you can make it up into a steak salad. You can make it up into an avocado salad.
Well, actually, the scene that comes to mind is the one out of The Matrix, where the guy wants to go back into the Matrix so that he can enjoy a steak. And he's sitting there enjoying a steak and a red wine. But it's not a steak and a red wine. It's just a computer program, and it's just information that's telling him that he's eating a steak and a red wine. And what's the difference?
Yeah. So, no, I mean, the truth is that we are in a big computer program. That's the truth. The truth is that we're in a virtual reality. That's the truth. But the virtual reality is so designed by higher intelligence that our souls learn moral lessons. Because the virtual reality known as the universes and the multiverse and the incarnation system allow us to develop as souls. We also have duties in between life to come back and tinker with and help create other universes and tinker with time and create new plant species and stuff like that in soul form.
Well, I'm hearing a counter argument. Oh, is that bird back? The bird
birds follow the highest level of signal from the galactic center, I'm told. Yeah.
But I just wanted to say that I'm hearing a counter argument in my head, which is that if we're all just avatars and it's all just programs, then one program destroying another program. But what are we actually doing at soul level is the question.
Yeah, no, we're developing our souls. Look, we had two guests here the other night. They're a husband and wife couple, and in their immediate prior life, she was a German fighter pilot who had shot him, an English fighter pilot, down over the English Channel in the War for Britain.
And now they're going to have to.
And they're having a really nice life, you know. I mean, once one becomes, you know, and so they broke through the amnesia at that level, you know, and so
is that part of that process? Are we all going to wake up from that amnesia and remember these past?
You know, it's so personal. I mean, people can go to you can go to the Newton Institute and you know, go to your soul memories of the interlife. People can go to past life therapists. Religions, which are really more political institutions. Religions are a great purveyor of misinformation and scientifically inaccurate information about the nature of our condition on this planet. And the memes that they create are greatly responsible for many of the conflicts that we have on this planet and for much of the confusion. And so one of the greatest challenges is going to be how to scientifically educate our global community of souls out of their conditioning of religious misinformation. This is one of the reasons why I wrote the book, The Omniverse, and I address all of these issues and go into the scientific polls. Do you know that according to a recent scientific poll, an Ipsos poll of essentially the G20 countries, which accounts for about 75% of the GDP of the planet? Do you know that only 7% of the adults in the G20 countries believe in reincarnation? 7%.
Wow.
That is look, and the scientifically, the condition, the human condition is that you're here because of the reincarnation system. And only 7% of the G20 nations, including China, believe in reincarnation? What a cosmically woeful, ignorant planet. Look at the educational challenges that we have. I wrote this book as a perspective, not for any axe to grind, saying, look at the challenges of this isolated, underdeveloped planet. And so I lay out a 10-point program for really bringing this planet out of its cosmic dark ages. I mean, 7% of the population believes that we're in reincarnation. The reason why we're here is because of reincarnation. How is one going to overcome that? We should have tremendous public resources just on the science about reincarnation. And just getting to square one, that reincarnation exists, that it should be publicly taught, and that this is the science of it. And, you know, it's just like, I mean, it takes us, our adult lives, thankfully, it takes excuse me, I'm just going to have a sip here. It takes the crystal kids, thank God, because they have, you know, more chakras, and, you know, they just come in with more strands of their DNA vibrating. Us early indigos, well, we had to tough it back in our day, and they just come in awakened, right? So, you know, they're going to be able to carry through that. And I think that Mary Rodwell was saying that 80% of the babies born, and practically all of them, are crystal kids now. So if that's the case, then, you know, we're now in 2014. By 2025, that's 10 years from now, all the 10-year-olds are going to be awakened avatars. I mean, awakened humans. And
that to me is the biggest challenge, is the religious dogma.
Yeah, it is because it's misinformation that's treated as sacred, with in many cases the death penalty if you abandon those beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
And the matrix forces, it's the CIA and the Zionist forces that have been creating the Islamic fanatics in order to keep the permanent war machine going, because the hold that the matrix forces have on the planet, which is essentially the Zionist, Draco, Anunnaki hierarchy, monarchist, Vatican side, is that they figured that by creating the Islamic fanatics, they'd have the best chance of perpetuating war, even in the positive timeline. So our job now is just to say, no, sorry, we're on a positive timeline, and guess what? You don't have traction anymore. And eventually people wake up.
So what are your other points? You said you had 10. Let's have a look at another few of them. You've got new energy, teleportation, and time travel.
Yeah. You mean 10 points for the future?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now try this. These are my favorites. You remember the Swiss canton democracy, right? And you go to the Swiss cantons, which are the villages, and there's no city council. Everybody gathers in the village square, right?
Mm-hmm.
And and you got to be there, and you vote on laws, yay or nay. You vote on policy, yay or nay, right? And and you have a budget for people, pick up the garbage and do all that kind of stuff. Well, now secure virtual technology permits the implementation of Swiss canton democracy worldwide. There is no more need for intermediaries such as city councils, state or provincial legislatures, national parliaments or congresses, or even gatherings of nations such as the UN. And all that you'll have is everybody, this is my new iPhablet. It's the cross between the iPhone and the tablet. And I've got my virtual voting machine here, which is totally secure because, if you can bomb Iraq from a bunker in West Palm Beach, well, you can create one of these things that are secure, right? Instead of swords into plowshares. And then all you do is say, oh, yeah, whether it's for your local city, of which you are a registered citizen, or your local state or province, or your nation, or the world, they bring up all the laws and you go up or down, yay or nay, or whatever. And there's no more intermediaries, because the city councils, the legislatures and the MPs and all these guys, they're always going to be bought off by the powers that be. So just eliminate the middleman.
But then
right?
who becomes the powers that be?
There are no more powers that be. It's the people.
Yeah, but then somebody has to coordinate, even if that's their own.
Yeah, these are paid civil servants who are paid to pick up the garbage, to educate, to spend public monies. The rest is private enterprise, and money right now through the incredible fraud that was committed by the Rothschild family and the 13 families, who are robber barons, that is a putrid robber race, a putrid family that makes you want to barf, where they sent their cousins over to start the bank panic of 1907, 1908. thereby creating, the problem, reaction, solution, thereby creating the need for, quote, need for a central bank, even though the U.S. in its constitution provided that the U.S. Treasury was the central bank and could print its own money. No, no, no. You shouldn't be able to print your own money unless you borrow it from the Federal Reserve, which is as federal as Federal Express. It has to be owned by the Rothschild family, right? It's these Khazars. They're just a race of thieves. And so then in 1913, they get a crooked politician, president of Princeton University, having an affair. They blackmail him, and he signs the Federal Reserve Bank, which is beneficially owned by the Rothschild family, which if you look at it now, we saw a U.S. congressional report that all the banks that supposedly own the Federal Reserve are beneficially owned by the Rothschild family. So it means that every U.S. dollar bill that people have is actually owned by the Rothschilds. All that you have is a license to have it for the exchange of goods and services. And that meant because the Rothschild Rockefeller had the monopoly on oil and petroleum, they tied it to the dollar. And that's why we've had the petrodollar economy for up until now. Now in the BRICS, which people are saying, oh, the BRICS. Well, I'm sorry. Mao Zedong was a skull and bones project. Mao Zedong was a project of skull and bones. He was first employed by Yale in China, my alma mater. It's Illuminati. Communism is Illuminati. Skull and Bones funded, along with the Rothschilds, the Bolsheviks. They were a splinter party. They brought it to the center. They took over the communists at the same time that they funded Adolf Hitler. So they control fascism. They control communism. They control communism in China. They control Mao. Mao was a skull and bones Illuminati project. Anybody who thinks that the BRICS is something new, Now, Putin is like today's Napoleon.
So you mentioned Putin, and I do want to get into Putin and Obama and their roles, you could say, how they're playing off one another right now so beautifully.
Well, yeah. Okay, so this is like, upper theater gossip or analysis. And by upper theater, I mean this. This is analysis of geopolitics and world figures that are used as archetypal memes in upper theater. The Pope, the Queen, the Obama, the Putin, the New World Order, that relate to other memes, the Christ, the Antichrist, the false prophet, that are memes that are prophesied memes of a catastrophic timeline or certain socio-religious political roles that have been projected onto this time in various remote viewings or sacred texts over time, and that may or may not correspond to the reality of the that is occurring now in this new positive timeline. So that's how I like to sort of talk about these figures who now emerge onto what I call upper theater. And it seems like the significant new arrival, or the new kid on the block of upper theater, since Prince William and Kate kind of exited stage left after 2012, is Vladimir Putin. And this is some analysis on him, and the way that he emerged in our conversation was really in a discussion about one of the 10 points that we were talking about, and I'd like to access one of those 10 points if I could.
Mm-hmm.
It'll take me just a moment here. Here we go. The reinvention of money as a human right. You asked me how things look in this new time, 2017, 2025, and the future, right? In the positive timeline. Reinvention of money as a human right and a public utility like air, water, or electricity, available for creative investment at public money utilities. In other words, everybody has a guaranteed annual income as long. Kind of the background is this. I like to call this planet the planet of money, because money is an Anunnaki invention, is a method of imprisonment. The modern generation of money was invented at the temples of Babylon, where it was used as a medium of exchange for sex with the temple prostitutes / goddesses, which the Mardukian priests used to exchange the farmer's wheat for sacred sex with the temple prostitutes. So there is where money, illicit sex, prostitution, and social control were all born together in the Babylonian temples, which was the origin of the Hebraic temples, direct origin down during the time of the Babylonian captivities down to the modern temples, which have both the money and the sacrifice component to it. So money has always been associated with a imprisonment, the profanation of the divine, control, prostitution, sex. Those are its origins on this planet, and it has nothing to do with prosperity. And
could it be said that we are prostituting ourselves?
Yes, that's how it does. And yeah, and that's how those who originated it on the Anunnaki side of things, and those who then really moved it into the Judaic and then Judaic-Christian culture, the Mardukian Babylonian temples, we're operating on those programs. So what we're talking about is the reinvention of money as a human right and a public utility, as long as we have money. The background is this, that this coming period, I believe, will be the period of the apprenticeship of the surface dwellers by the inner earth people. The inner earth of our earth is populated by very ancient and evolved human civilization that has been underground. They are Agartha, probably the survivors of the enlightened times of Atlantis and Mu. There are other elements that are underground in terms of extraterrestrial and interdimensional bases, and B, of course, the deep underground bases of the matrix elite, but which are separate. And as I understand it, the Agarthans do not function on a money society. They function on the basis of deep values and on what I believe should be the ideal for the surface population. And I believe that this coming time, rather than being mentored by extraterrestrials, which is what one common meme or myth is, that we should be mentored by the Agarthians, who are the true guardians of planet Earth. And they really think of the surface population as, violent and dangerous, and who would not blame them? And so on all the discussion that I've had on a topic called exoeconomics, I used to teach in the economics department at Yale, has to do, that is, with economics as practiced throughout the universe and throughout the multiverse. I say, well, let's start at home. Let's see how the Agarthians function in a culture without money. And clearly you need a shift of consciousness, because money is built around duality consciousness, and the essential, the Zionist sort of the archetype of, am I going to cheat him out of his money and make a bundle? Where you have the Rothschild family is worth between $1 and $500 trillion, and out of the 7 billion, about 2 to 3 billion go to bed hungry, and they have not the slightest empathy. I mean, we're led by psychopaths, so there's something that's really off about the leadership and about that money system. It's psychopathic. It's beyond sociopathic. And
agreed.
The people that invented it and that system leads to psychopathy and it's to the advantages of those darker entities, archonic entities, to have it there. So the following is what is proposed: a reinvention of money as a human right, public utility like air, water, electricity, available for creative investment at public money utilities, in the same way that you have, free energy devices, free, soon, i.e. the whole area of where you would have a water utility, an electricity utility is going to be deconstructed anyway, because we're going to have the decentralization of energy through free energy devices, where every home or every unit will be operating under a free energy device, will be soon going off of trains, planes, buses, automobiles, and moving into teleportation within the next century.
Do you see that as an organic form of teleportation or a synthetic mechanized?
Good question. I'm not, I can't wave
yes, you can, Alfred.
a magic wand. Oh, well, if you lean this way, we'll all go bloop, and we'll be reborn in the fifth dimension, be 15 feet tall, 40 years old, no, 25 years old, and eternally beautiful in leading a good life.
There you go.
Or we'll be in just a better environment. I don't know.
Actually, now that we're on this subject, let me just throw something by you. I had a dream, I'll say.
Okay.
And it was recent. Now, what I've always sort of mentally conceived in the past was that there was a period in our history where we reached a level of enlightenment, excuse me. Then there was what we refer to as the fall.
Yeah.
And that since that period of time, we've been on a timeline where we are replicating synthetically what we used to do organically. However, in this experience that I had, I saw the two timelines running simultaneously. And that the organic teleportation, telepathy, instant manifestation, all of these things that these biosuits are in fact designed to be able to do, it's still there. It's still in existence. It's still happening. and that we're running this synthetic version underneath, and that they were about to collide, like really soon. And I've learned to hate the word soon, but that's the word that I woke up with, was this soon they were going to clash and bump into each other. And it's actually a visceral, physical sensation that I can feel, and that we're this close, actually, to switching all of these things on. So, but I wonder whether we will need to go through those.
Well, yeah. Now, those are key questions in my studies that led to the book Omniverse, and kind of the breakthroughs that I had there, and spending some real time in the interlife, which most people know as the afterlife. Even the afterlife is fairly technologized, from what I can see. It's much more telepathic. It's much more creating your own reality. However, there are still, for example, when you go to the period of preparing to choose a new life, from what I understand, and these are replicable results. These are from standard protocols and replicable results, which is the scientific method. So you're not cherry picking. These are many people who have that. Is that you will go and you can you can actually sample from, like, holographic televisions will let you sample different lives and say, oh, do you want life A, B, or C? So you can sample. Do I want to be this person, that person, or that person? And that's technology. I.e., we live, the multiverse and the omniverse are highly technologized. Souls are created in sort of a mass production process. I hate to break it.
That actually gets into a whole other area. There's so many things to talk to you about. You talked about reincarnation and the technology that's in the between life stage, call it that.
Yeah.
I've come to the conclusion some time ago that reincarnation is in fact a trap. And you even talked about the light, that until something presents itself to lead me to believe otherwise, I feel in many cases that light is in fact a false lure, shiny little object that says, look over here. And here's where all your dead relatives and your pet from when you were 3 is. And that it is an artificial process, and that there is a technology involved. I do believe perhaps even the greys are involved. And that's why it's what you're seeing is technology, and that's why it appears artificial, is because it is. And we are given A, B, C, and D lives to look at and choose from, but they are ones that are presented to us, not necessarily ones we would organically choose for ourselves at our deepest soul level. That's what I wanted to share. Okay.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's fine. Okay, the counter argument to that is that in the case studies, the cases of reincarnations that are managed aboard the gray ships appear in a separate category of cases and are outside of the norm and are not in the vast body of cases that take place in the interlife dimension. And we don't know yet why these categories of grays have been sort of subcontracted. The reincarnation license on certain categories of special souls, for example, the case of Suzanne Hansen that I talk about in the book. She's the lady who's the head of UFO New Zealand, where she was first introduced to the solar of her son as an 8-year-old child when she was beamed aboard a great spaceship. And fast forward, she was married and pregnant, taken aboard a great spaceship and introduced to the solar of her son. And then, all this time they became familiar with each other. And then eventually a special gray appeared. She was on a gurney, and the gray came, and her soul was brought in, and they went through a special operation that a special gray did to immerse the soul, embed the soul into the fetus of her son. Now, that's very much like the process that happens in incarnation, which is that during a normal birth, the soul, when it's about to incarnate, emerges from the interdimensional portal, travels to the time-space coordinates of where the mother's located at about 3 months prior to birth, stays next to the fetus, and then gradually incorporates itself into the fetus about 3 months prior to natural birth. And then at that point goes through all of the amnesia process and comes out. Typically, mother and child, as you know, have a long history. They can be business partners, mortal enemies, husband and wife in a prior life, whatever. But it's a soul development situation. But I don't see anything unnatural about a certain category of grays having subcontracted that function, and still the soul function largely taking place in this interlife dimension from the data. The data, to normal people who don't take an academic clinical detachment to it, can really freak people out. I agree. I completely agree. And I applaud you in having had the mental freedom to say, well, I think the whole thing's a trap, because you're thinking outside of the box. And it could be that the whole thing's a trap, and that other processes occur, because that's what the case is.
Well, there's also people who, like Daniel Brinkley, for example, the whole life review scenario. Not everybody goes through that. And that seems to be part of the process for then being presented with various scenarios in order to come back, that kind of thing. There's just something about it that feels off, I guess is all I can say on that one.
You mean that it's an intrusion on your free will? Is that what you're saying?
Perhaps, yeah.
Yeah.
It feels a limitation. It feels like a limitation, I think. The one that doesn't feel natural. I think we should be able to and can innately choose where to experience in physicality, in what species, in what location, in what... We should be able to choose which game we want to play. We should not be restricted to one game machine in the arcade.
That goes without saying. Each soul has the absolute freedom to incarnate at any point, as any creature, anywhere, within limits. But we have been a whole variety of different avatars. We've been reptilians, we've been this, that, and the other thing. And I'm sure that we've been in many different dimensional ecologies. By dimensional ecologies, I mean not only at the third density, but second density, first density. Do you want to be a rock? You want to be a tree? I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Sorry,
Lost audio.
I muted myself. So, let's move on then back to the money side of things,
Yeah,
which will lead into perhaps Putin and Obama and the other players.
yeah, yeah.
So money as a given right. So everybody is given a minimum.
Yeah, yeah. This is, see, where it depends on your frame of reference. If you're saying that with this 2017 burst of consciousness, it's a burst of consciousness that is going to permit us to expand beyond the matrix, comma, but you're still inside a timeline that is fairly within upper third density and lower fourth density, then we might not instantaneously evolve beyond money, or we might not instantaneously evolve into a planet where we're, just changed into there's this quantum leap.
Well,
Some
when you
of
mention
the channelers say that that there's going to be this quantum leap. Okay, and I think that it's and there may be, but I think it's more consistent that the differences between densities of consciousness is by degree and not by quanta.
okay,
So what that implies is as follows. If you're talking about matrix money, something like BRICS, in which the BRICS countries, which are in fact offshoots of the colonial countries, the IS countries, the communist countries that were founded as an ism of the deepest part of the Illuminati. Communism was a project of Skull and Bones and the Rothschilds and the City of London bankers, and that's what's true historically. And so the BRICS countries now, and they've brought in the Vatican and the Pope to be a partner in the BRICS Central Bank, which is worth about $100 billion now, which is a drop in the bucket to Federal Reserve. The good part is that it's all real money. It's all gold compared to the funny money of the Federal Reserve, okay? What the BRICS is and what founded it was essentially a handshake deal between the leader of China and the leader of Russia, in which China said, we'll buy all your gold, but we won't use US dollars. And so that founded BRICS. And that broke the petrodollar. That broke the stranglehold that the Rothschilds had had since 1913 for 100 years on the Rothschilds' private money, the dollar, private currency, and oil. Okay? So by that handshake, they broke the back of the Rothschilds' monopoly. So that's a good thing that happened there. So as a transition, it's great. And we'll just see how that's going to be managed. My concern is, what about the little person, right? I mean, what about us? The way I see things, I don't see things in terms of the systems of nations, because the systems of nations is just a leftover from the Anunnaki occupation of 280,000 years ago. All nations, it all comes, look, all popes, all religions, all kings and queens, all pharaohs, they all come down from the Anunnakis. All those hats, all those crowns, they're all Anunnaki wannabes. And they're all those bloodlines come down through the pharaohs, the cone heads, down through the kings and queens. The crowns are the cone heads. That's all it is. Even the bishops and the pope, they're wearing their cone heads and their robes. They're trying to be like Anunnakis. It's that basic. And they're doing two things. They're exploiting us for the gold, and they're manipulating and dumbing down our DNA. And that's what the Anunnakis did 280,000 years ago. That's what they're trying to do now. Okay, so what's happening now is that at the individual level, we're taking back our sovereignty. We're individually reactivating our DNA. So we're back at 4-strand, 6-strand, because through consciousness, you reactivate your own individual strands. That's why we do the work every day, right? And we're sovereign. Sovereignty is built on ourselves. Each soul is the sovereign. We're the sovereign beings. No one else is sovereign but us. And that's what citizens' tribunals are all about, and that's what citizens' government is all about. So everything else is irrelevant. So that's where I proceed from. And so I'm involved in creating sovereignty-based, citizen-based currency, citizen-based government, citizen-based tribunals, because all of that other stuff, including BRICS, is more Anunnaki-based stuff. And so therefore, that is the activity that we're involved in now. And I believe that with the shift of consciousness, that can begin to happen very swiftly. And I'll get to Putin, everybody, in a minute, because they're kind of upper theater figures, and it's very easy to say the kind of numbers that they're doing. So what we're doing at the citizen level is, number one, in education. We're launching, it's called Exo-Uni, and now we have strategic partners in Europe that are launching for Europe and Russia, for Asia, for South America, and for North America. It's the full human life cycle: nature, health, exoeconomics, everything that the whole educational system is keeping out, we're offering. Okay, in each, and now we have strategic partners in each sector. Okay, there. We just announced on November 20th in Brussels at a conference a new citizens-based tribunal to prosecute war crimes. So we'll be prosecuting all of these war crimes, ranging from financial war crimes, all the pedophilia and child sacrifice networks, the transhumanist agenda, all of the chemtrails, the HARPs, the implantation of the humans. 80% of the humans now have nanobots in that jump the blood-brain barrier. They're in their brains that have been activated from the chemtrails, and then the heart is connected to banks of supercomputers, and that's why most of the human race are couch potatoes and go, oh, we don't know. It's because of that HARP chemtrails machine that puts them to sleep. So we know who's behind that now. We're working with whistleblowers like William Binney, who's an NSA whistleblower, and others. And we just brought on Laurent Louis, who's a former MP, member of parliament of the Belgian parliament, who stood up in parliament and exposed the royal family, the prime minister, and the members of the Belgian parliament and of the elite lawyers and bankers as pedophiles. Mm-hmm. And he's coming in as the prosecutor for the tribunal, and we'll have a number of other judges. And we just announced, sorry.
Well, I've got two questions already.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So before they start adding up too much.
Okay.
Going back to what we were saying in the beginning about this new pulse, this new frequency, this new base frequency that's in the unity consciousness. then making a statement like, 85% of the population are infested with these nanobots. I'm thinking that the technology that's involved through HARP, through the chemtrails and through these nanobots are coming from that old paradigm. They're old paradigm technology with old paradigm intent. So does it mean that their efficacy will start to just dissolve because it's not now in alignment, it's not supported?
Yeah, it means that's why the New World Order is failing and they're not meeting their objectives is because David Rockefeller and all those guys and the 13 families and that whole New World Order, Frankenstein monster had it all laid out, and then everything shifted in 2012. And they don't have the specs to operate on this new timeline and in this new consciousness.
And the second question was enforcement. You've been involved in these types of tribunals before. You've found guilty verdicts.
Yeah.
But these people are still in their positions of perceived power. They are still...
No? It's not true.
Okay, tell me.
Yeah, for example...
Bush and Blair guilty?
No, hold on. Yeah, I'm about to tell you a story.
Okay, go.
See, you're repeating a meme, and I'm here to deconstruct that meme.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yesterday was November 22nd. It was the third anniversary of November 22nd, 2011, when we found George W. Bush and Tony Blair guilty of the Nuremberg-level war crimes for starting the invasion of Iraq. It was also the 40th anniversary of the assassination of John F. Kennedy on November 22nd, 1963 in Dealey Plaza, at which George W. Bush's father, George H.W. Bush, was the leader of a team of riflemen in the building right next to the book depository, because he had been ordered that if he was going to get in on the power, he had to get his hands bloody and be there. So we found Bush Sr., Bush Jr. guilty of war crimes, but he tracked him down on the same day that Bush Sr. was there. So I get to say this today as a judge, okay? And they know that. Now, because they don't come up here to Vancouver to do satanic ritual slayings of young Aboriginal women at the Vancouver Club anymore. They can't do that anymore because of our verdict, okay? So yes, it is being enforced, but I'll tell you that more exclusively, because after our verdict, Tony Blair, who was the great world traveler of the New World Order and, would just, as a criminal, go into any jurisdiction, went into South Africa, and it was Archbishop Desmond Tutu and a whole network there who went up to the South African authorities and demanded Blair's arrest by the public prosecutor on the grounds of our verdict. And Blair had to leave the country, which he did. So that's enforcement. And neither Blair nor Bush can leave the country now, where they're protected by the CIA and the CIA president, Barack Obama, a real name Barry Soetoro, third generation CIA operative, because any other country will arrest them, and we have people waiting, and our verdict is one of the verdicts that are out there waiting for that. So this meme, which is a meme being spread, if you trace it down by the guilty parties, no, the enforcement is there. The enforcement is there, and guess what? Pretty soon, we'll have it enforced in the U.S. too.
Well, that's good to hear, because not being able to travel would be seen by many as not much of a punishment. Still living at home.
Bush. Yeah. George Bush now, his traveling is to go to Las Vegas and give speeches to Lexus dealers.
Okay. I mean, they're members of the public, and I can't blame them. Want to see these guys rotting in cells somewhere, and they want retribution. And
there is no, and we are moving see, there's two brands of justice: retributive justice and restorative justice.
Yes.
Retributive justice takes Rothschild and it hangs him in the village square. Restorative justice takes Rothschild and a forensic accountant and takes that $500 trillion and puts it to work for humanity. And that's why I think that we have to have restorative justice with the forensic accountants. You know, whatever individual punishment comes to being able to pierce that corporate veil, which we will do through the RICO statute, the racketeering statute, because these individuals are members of what I call a war crimes, international war crimes racketeering organization. Their racket is war. And the governments are just fronts. So that's their racket. So, you know, and they may have controlled the courts and the prosecutors, but they don't control the citizen prosecutors, and they don't control the police, because not all of them. They may control 50% of the police who work for the satanics. But as we demonstrated just a couple of months ago, where Interpol arrested 1,500 child traffickers throughout Europe on the basis of reports that the International Tribunal into Crimes of Church and State, a citizens tribunal, had helped do, that shows that the forces of light are working within the enforcement branches as well. In other words, it's, you know, there's a biblical phrase, two shall be in the field, one shall be taken, and one shall be left. Well, that means you have two policemen, one's a good cop, one's a bad cop. We're working with the good cops, and they make arrests for child traffickers.
You know, it's probably even heartening for some people to hear, because what you see constantly on your wall on Facebook is, you know, 6 cops shooting somebody who stole a coffee, or turning up to answer a 911 call for help and shooting the person who called. And there's one atrocity after another, perpetrated by predominantly the United States police forces. But it's even starting to happen here. And again, it's part of that. Where do you want to put your focus, and which timeline, or which game do you want to admit to being in?
Now
the evidence is there either way.
That is a perfect segue to yet another project of ours that we announced yesterday on November 22nd, and that is Inside Out News.
Oh, okay.
We're forming a news agency, because we report the news inside out. We turn the Matrix inside out. We turn the Vatican inside out. We turn the UK Crown inside out. We just show, well, let's turn it inside out and show what it's like. And all you have to show it, and then people make it out for themselves. And instantly, the picture, I mean, people are smart. They get it. They just haven't seen the evidence before. So with John Kelly and I, both of us had been Examiner reporters. Both of us were at the top of the field there. John was, you know, way and above, one of the top Examiner reporters. In November 22nd, 2011, I was in Kuala Lumpur, and I was one of the top Examiner. I was the exopolitical reporter for Seattle, but I was one of the top read Examiner political reporters. I was more widely read than the White House reporter, everybody. And suddenly, Examiner, while I was in Kuala Lumpur, they yanked down my exclusive story based on 2 eyewitnesses Andy Basiago and Brett Stillings, who were eyewitnesses to the fact that Barack Obama, Barry Soetoro, had been a CIA operative since 18 years old, have been trained in the secret Mars program, have been to Mars with them.
I remember when all
And
of that went down for you with the examiner.
And they accused me of publishing false news. Well, the same thing happened to John last week, where he was able to expose Bill Cosby as an MK Ultra CIA asset, who his job was to be kind of this MK Ultra asset on the news, you know, and in the media that they could put out propaganda with. And he was a serial rapist. In fact, this friend of mine on Facebook just contacted me last night, and she was serially raped, but she was a rape victim of Cosby. And because John Kelly exposed him as a CIA-controlled MK Ultra asset, which nobody else did, they terminated his examiner contract just last week at the almost the exact same day as they did mine three years ago. So we figured out the CIA has this thing called Operation Mockingbird, where they plant a CIA asset in each newspaper and then boing.
Yep.
So we figured out it was a CIA that terminated us both. So we said, boom, we're going to found a new news agency called Inside Out News, which we have. It's going to launch shortly. And we're going to get the same access to the mainstream news that Examiner has, because we're figuring out how to do that. So that's the third ingredient. You're going to start seeing, instead of those cops doing it, you see the opposite story on your Facebook wall from us.
Nice. That's what we need to be. I feel like our job, my job at least, has shifted to putting as much evidence out there as possible.
Yeah.
That we are on a positive timeline, that the shift has in fact happened. And all you need to do is look for the evidence and to pump out as much evidence as possible.
Yeah.
There's so much, but we've talked already for so long that I feel like maybe we need to save the rest of it for another day, but one day soon, because I really do feel that having a discussion on, as we talked about, some of these major players, the Putin and Obama, it's still one of the things that needs to be said, but also going over more and more of your 10 points.
Yeah.
And so people can start to see or start to have an idea of where to look for the evidence.
Yeah.
You know, and I also, very briefly, if we can, the very little that I do know of in regards to the Agathans and how they operate in the moneyless society.
Sorry, I didn't get that last sentence you said.
The little bit I do know about the Agathans and how they operate in terms of a moneyless society revolves around, it almost sounds a bit like Ubuntu. It's a contribution-based situation where everybody's needs are met. Food, shelter, clothing, everybody's needs are met, and everybody contributes a certain number of hours each week or each month to the running of society and keeping it running, whether it's collecting food, growing food, distributing food, or garbage, or manufacturing, whatever needs to happen, everybody, and it comes down to a very little amount of time that is required from every individual to keep the whole machine running.
Exactly.
And the rest of the time is spent in spiritual and creative relationship endeavors. Exactly. It's not that hard.
Exactly.
I'd collect garbage for 4 hours a week if that's what was needed.
Yeah. No, and there's a lot of issues. Right now we've been struggling with the issue of good and evil, and that's the issue that we've been struggling with over the term of the Lucifer rebellion for the last 1,000,000 years. Whether or not we've learned that lesson, and whether we have to bring that into the next time, the next period, and well, how are we going to guard against someone taking over paradise and doing it again? The next level of Rothschild that'll come in and grab the reins and screw everybody. That's going to start. What's the angle to unity consciousness? That kind of mentality. I guess this is what we'll be discussing, if it's true in our sector of time and space, if it's true that we're in a flawed universe or something, or because we're in an afflicted, because we're incarnated on an afflicted planet where we had a default of the planetary leadership at a high level. We have a lot of vestiges of duality.
Well, this brings in the one element we haven't mentioned, which is the planet herself as a conscious being.
Gaia, you mean?
Yes, and her role. And if this is an afflicted planet, then I think, but I do agree with John Langlash. She's in the process of correction and healing.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
So you can't leave her out of this equation either.
No, I mean Gaia is key. I fail to see. I mean, I think Gaia is having taken as much punishment now with all the environmental warfare, with the HAARP, the artificial earthquakes, with the oil spills, with the fact that the matrix powers have attempted to ecocide Fukushima, radiation, with the try to use radiation to do ecocide. As I understand it, part of the plan of the Dracos was to do radiation to terraform the planet to make it more of a reptilian planet. So, I mean, Gaia has really been punished, right? So, and you can't blame the humans for that. It was the Dracos. I understand that the Dracos now have been kicked off, that we sort of won that war. But and not many people even know that there's, we have to bring the human consciousness into a fact that A, there's been a war going on, B, that there's even reincarnation. I know, and you have problems with that. That's why I proposed a 10-year period. Let's just stop the world. I want to get off. Stop the music. Let's have a 10-year timeout education program. It's all fully funded. Let's figure out who we are, and where we're going.
Well, I think the Rothschilds would, be happy to fund such a project, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, because all of these wars are just the program of one family or 13 families. That's the only reason that we have these wars. It's because it's part of their budget to make more money. That's all. And they're carrying out the agendas of some guys. So I think that the programs that we've put forth over the last 10 years in exopolitics, and now with these new programs of, in education, in news, in citizens tribunals, citizen-based governments, I think that they are really going to work, and that's what I'm kind of pushing out to the fore and see how it kind of moves.
Brilliant. Thank you. Keep me posted on Inside Out, and I will help support that in any way I can.
Okay, good. Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Well, let's talk again soon. So thank you, Alfred Webre. For anybody who wants to read up on the articles in regards to Positive Future, it is positivefuture.info.
Yeah.
Or exopolitics.com.
Yeah.
And Alfred's recent book, the Omniverse, although it does have a lot more of a title than that.
Yeah, it's the dimensional ecology of the Omniverse, soon to be the Omniverse.
Can people get that in digital format, or have they got to wait until the publisher comes out with it in?
No. Right now, actually, there's a great opportunity for people. That book is going to be published by Inner Traditions Barron Company in the fall of 2015, and between now and around February or March of 2015, it's available at exopolitics.com or Amazon or anywhere in the first edition. And when it comes out it'll be in the second edition. Now, first editions will be very valuable, so I urge everybody to go out and say, I have a first edition. Because after February or March of 2015, there'll be no more first editions. So,
okay.
And some first editions of some of my books are now going for hundreds of dollars. They are.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a tip. People say, what should I do with my money? Well, buy my books.
Alfred,
I'm joking around. It's Sunday, right?
Well, it's a very hot Monday morning here for me, so I have to go and get out of these jeans. Thank you once again. Always a pleasure. And we'll talk soon.
Thank you very much. Good.
Bye for now.
Thank you very much.
Broadcasting a new paradigm on the One Network.